Fortunately, some are born with spiritual immune systems that sooner or later give rejection to the illusory worldview grafted upon them from birth through social conditioning. They begin sensing that something is amiss and start looking for answers. Inner knowledge and anomalous outer experiences show them a side of reality others are oblivious to, and so begins their journey of awakening. Each step of the journey is made by following the heart instead of following the crowd, and by choosing knowledge over the veils of ignorance, and thus begins their journey of illuminating the darkness.
All information presented in this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not the opinion of its producers. No copyright infringement is intended. Hello, and welcome back to Illuminated Darkness. When some people hear the word cult, their mind often goes to shady individuals in black robes with black candles, chanting some strange language and killing virgins and babies. But that isn't always the case. Some cults come under the guise of Christianity, promising salvation and a direct pathway to heaven. Some cults promise protection and survival of the looming black cloud of doomsday. And while still other groups promote self awareness, sustainability, clean air, clean water, and love. There are a few that promise network opportunities to become a major player in business. Now, most, if not all, make a fleeting promise to make you a better you, give you the tools to lift yourself out of poverty, to lift yourself out of depression, to mend relationships. The list goes on and on and on. And if you're stupid enough to buy it, you deserve whatever happens to you. But these groups, most often than not, come with a leader that is good looking, successful, and always seems to have the answer to every damn thing. And what does he ask for in return for this universal wisdom and help? Your undying devotion, your blind obedience, your complete allegiance, every penny in your savings, and every penny you ever hope to make, your house, your car, and in some instances, your wife, your daughter, your sister, your mother, and on rare occasion, your very life itself. Now, I have always joked that Jim Jones, David Koresh, and Charles Manson all had pretty good ideas. They just went about it the wrong fucking way. So what is it that draws people into a cult? What is the appeal of surrendering total control to someone else? To just let go, let someone tell you what to think, what to say, where to work, where to live, what to wear, and what to eat. Most times it starts with just wanting to fit in, wanting to belong to something, to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And yet it always ends up with following blindly all the way to the prison or to the grave. What is our fascination with these fringe groups? And what drives the leaders of these groups to seek total control and the blind obedience and faith of their followers? If you grew up in the 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s, you knew who the Manson family was, and most likely your initial exposure to them was the book Helter Skelter or the TV movie based on the book. You know the term drinking the Kool-Aid is based on the events of Jonestown. Kids in the 90s learned about David Koresh and the Branch Davidians when the federal government stormed their compound in Waco. Now, to tell the truth, I still question how the fire was lit. And in all honesty, I still think it was Clinton and Reno that gave the okay for the TAC teams to light the match. In the past few years, we've learned about Warren Jeffs and the FLDS, but there are more out there than some of us may have ever heard of. So let's take a good look at the strange world of cults. We've all heard of them. Jim Jones and the People's Temple, the Manson family, the Branch Davidians, Heaven's Gate, NXIVM, the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Unification Church, Rajneeshpuram, the Children of God, the Solar Temple, and the list goes on and on. And thanks to streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Max, and the host of others, we get to learn about their inner workings of these groups from people who escaped the groups and lived to tell the tale. But then again, we're still at the mercy of what the media will let us see and what they'll hold back. And the holding back may be because the case is still tied up in the legal system, or the powers that be have decided our fragile little minds can't handle the horror of the actuality of what really happened, or, and heaven forbid, the government doesn't want anyone to know about their part of it. Yeah, again, I'm making another reference to my suspicions about what really happened in Waco in '93. So before we get too deep into some of the cults, let's take a look at what it takes to make a cult and what are some of the signs that you or a loved one may be involved in a cult. Cults are an organized group. Their purpose is to dominate and control its members by any means necessary. Manipulation, abuse, either physical, psychological, or sexual, financial exploitation, and isolation. They normally have a leader that demands total obedience, and this leader will use any tactic of control, including but not limited to the above aforementioned means. Members will believe that they are serving the greater good. This is because they are in so deep that they don't see what's actually happening. Cults are normally very closed off and very suspicious of outsiders. Now, some may break free and go on to rejoin society, having come away with a very positive experience, at least according to that individual. While others may break free and spend years trying to recover from the psychological, physical, and financial damage, as well as spending years trying to rebuild relationships that were damaged by their involvement. As was seen with the People's Temple and Heaven's Gate, when there is a mass suicide event within the cult, family members spend their lives questioning what could they have done to have prevented their loved one from falling victim to the cult's influence. According to the Cult Education Institute, there are warning signs you can look for when considering if a group is a cult or not. And there are 10 of these actually. Number 1, absolute authoritarianism without accountability. Number 2, zero tolerance for criticism or questions. Number 3, lack of meaningful financial disclosure regarding budget. Number 4, unreasonable fears about the outside world that often involve evil conspiracies and persecutions. Number 5, a belief that former followers are always wrong for leaving and there is never a legitimate reason for anyone else to leave. Number 6, abuse of members. Number 7, recordings, books, articles, or programming documenting the abuse of the leader or group. And number 8, followers feeling that they are never able to be good enough. Number 9, a belief that the leader's right all the time. Number 10, a belief that the leader is the exclusive means of knowing truth or giving validation. There's the top 10 things to look at and look for. So now let's take a look at the cults themselves. First off, we need to look at the types of cults. There are the following: destructive cults, doomsday cults, political cults, polygamous cults, racist cults, terrorist cults, and these can be broken down even further. There are Eastern cults, and these are characterized by their belief in spiritual enlightenment and reincarnation, and this is normally when a guru or a leader will draw from and twist Eastern philosophy and religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Sufism. There are religious cults, and these are characterized by an extreme belief in God, salvation, the afterlife, and sometimes the end of day and Book of Revelations. Now, there's also New Age cults, and this is where we find the UFO cults. Now, I can't say that tarot, chakras, astrology, runes, holistic practices, or any of that is or isn't a cult, for the simple fact many devout pagans, which is a recognized religion, uses a variety of those things in their practice as well. Now, granted, paganism, Wiccan, Druidism, pretty much any of them can be considered a New Age cult. However, keep this in mind. They are religions. They are a religion, a legitimate religious faith. It all depends on who's writing the article. The United States government now recognizes paganism as a religion for military members. So, just keep an open mind when you're looking at things. Now we have the satanic, occult, and black magic cults. Again, someone will go to the extreme. But thanks to the satanic panic in the 80s, again, legitimate religious practices got a bad rep. We have Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, founded in the 1960s, which was one of the first satanic cults. However, current high priest Peter H. Gilmore has been quoted as saying, "We do not believe in the supernatural. To the Satanist, he is his own God. Satan is a symbol of man living as his prideful, carnal nature dictates. Some Satanists extend this symbol to encompass the evolutionary force of entropy that permeates all of nature and provides the drive for survival and propagation, inherent in all living things. To the Satanist, Satan is not a conscious entity to be worshipped. Rather, it is a name for the reservoir of power inside each human to be tapped at will. Gilmore also stated in an interview, "My real feeling is that anyone who believes in supernatural entities on some level is insane. Whether they believe in the devil or God, they are abdicating reason," he added. Satanism begins with atheism. We begin with the universe and say, it's indifferent. There's no God, there's no devil, no one cares. So, that is their tenement of belief. Yours may be different. Not judging. Don't really care either. Religion to me is kind of like a penis. You got one, you're proud of it. Keep it out of my damn face, please. Now, there are psychotherapy and human potential and mass transformation cults. These are the motivational groups. You can change your life through simple thought groups. Then we come to the one-on-one and family cults. These are the cults where someone bases belief in a parent, partner, or teacher above all else. Then we have the political, racist, or terrorist cults. This is your QAnon, KKK, and Al-Qaeda. There are also commercial and multi-marketing cults. These are the Amway pyramid scheme groups. Sign up 5 friends. They each sign up 5 friends, and everybody gets a percentage. It's bullshit. Trust me. And finally, we have the cult of personality. These are the cults that revolve around common interest, martial arts, dance, some form of art. So, if we adhere to these guidelines, every one of us is a member of a cult at some point. Go figure. Well, always wanted to do something special with my life. Alright, let's start with some of the smaller groups that we haven't heard much about. These are groups that I didn't even know existed until I started researching. First, we have Angel's Landing. This group's 20-acre compound outside Wichita, Kansas, is where Lou Castro and a small group lived a very extravagant life that no one could seem to explain. Castro convinced his followers that he was an angel and seer who could look into the future and know when you were going to die. Local law enforcement became interested when a member of the cult was found dead in 2003 on the grounds of the compound. This woman's name was Patricia Hughes. Her husband died 3 years later in a freak accident. Now, it was later discovered that the group was taking out large insurance policies on their members who later died suddenly, and the group was cashing in. The leader later moved to Tennessee, took a new identity, and he was quickly arrested by the FBI for identity theft and using a stolen Social Security card. Dumbass. The FBI later discovered that Lou Castro was actually Daniel Perez from Texas and had several charges against him, including sex crimes against 2 girls under the age of 15. He was charged with 28 felonies and sentenced to 80 years in prison. Oh, I bet his mother's proud of him. Our next contestant is Om Shinrikyo. Master Ashra Shoko formed Om Shinrikyo in 1987. It was originally a yoga school until Ashra went to India and met the Dalai Lama and achieved enlightenment, so he says. He began teaching a combination of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity. Okay, that sounds fascinating, but that was fucked up. He gained many followers and began claiming that he was the embodiments of a god, securing many significant financial donations. At this point, the group became increasingly radical, and anyone who attempted to leave the group met with a violent ending. No, that's not good. By 1995, the group had about 50,000 members, primarily in Russia. Shock. And Ashra was preparing for war and expected to take his group to take over the government. How'd that go for you? It was Ashra who devised the attack on the Tokyo subway. 12 people died. 5,500 people were injured in the March 1995 attack. Ashra and his 6 followers were later executed in 2018. Guess you're not God after all, are ya, Ashra? Bummer. Now we come to the Black Jesus. Does anybody remember the book in the Bible where it says Jesus collected young girls for his harem, let his followers kill them and eat them when he was done with them? Hmm? Anyone? Okay, me neither. Someone should have let Steve Tari of Papua New Guinea know this because that's exactly what this self-styled Black Jesus did. He didn't get the memo. And he and 6,000 of his followers were declared enemies of the church by the Papua New Guinea Lutheran Church because of his scantily clad underage concubines known as flower girls. Bramhall Herman, the queen of the flower girls, aided Tari in sexually assaulting and murdering her 13-year-old daughter. He's also suspected of other sacrificial murders and cannibalism. Eventually arrested in 2005, Tari ended up convincing a Lutheran minister who was supposed to be counseling him to become a member of the flock, assisting in murders and assisting the leader to escape from prison, just as any good little brainwashed cult member should. And what did he do once he was released? Well, he started rebuilding his harem of underage girls again. What a sick bastard. By 2007, villagers have grown tired of his shit and dragged him from his mountain fortress and beat the living shit out of him, damn near killing the Chomo. Tari recovered enough by 2020 to stand trial and was sentenced to 20 more years at the Grey Bar Hotel and Resort. He managed to escape again in the village of Gaul in the Madang province, where he allegedly murdered another woman, and the villagers, once again having had enough of his shit, hacked him to pieces. He didn't come back 3 days later, so I'm fairly certain he learned his lesson on that one and he weren't Jesus. I swear, some of these groups are so far out in left field they're buying hot dogs at the concession stand. Our next prize winner, the Children of God. Founded in 1968, initially called Teens for Christ, this group was founded by rogue preacher David Berg in Huntington Beach, California. This group primarily attracted young runaways and hippies. Berg preached a kind of worship that was Jesus Christ and free love group living, zealous proselytizing, isolating communes, all pillars of the children of God, and that was how it worked in the 60s with free love members who amounted to 15,000 people across the world at its peak. Didn't work or go to school. The COG didn't believe in the nuclear family, so children were grouped together and didn't live with their parents. That's lovely. By the late 70s, the COG became notorious for its sexual practices that one of Berg's own daughters described religious prostitution, or as Berg called it, flirty fishing. That's a sexual practice in which women would allegedly have sex with men to get them to join the cult. Okay, pervert. Berg promoted then encouraged the sexualization of children within the community. Berg began to manipulate the group, leaving the community as Berg began to manipulate the group into leaving the community, when this included families of actors of Joaquin Phoenix and Rose McGowan. They both grew up in the church, and, well, now we know why they're both psychologically fucked up. They came forward in the 90s and described the environment that permitted and actively encouraged physical and sexual abuse of young children. One member appeared on a talk show in 93 and revealed he'd been ordered by the group to sexually assault a child. This member later committed suicide. Berg's son was sexually abused throughout his life by his father and the group, and while Berg died in 94 under FBI investigation, the cult still continues to exist and goes by another name of the Family International. Doesn't sound too warm and inviting to me. The group claims that their horrific practices of the past are now over. I doubt it. There's a documentary on Netflix called The Children of God. And by golly, I'm going to load that one right up. See, it's these sick ones that really get me, and I get flustered and can't talk, and they just really tear me up. Anybody that thinks this is okay needs to be shot twice. I'm sorry. I digress. Our next contestant is the Matamoros. I can't read my own notes. Cult. And this is a twisted version of a Palo Mayotte translation tradition, which is basically a dark form of Santeria, which is an African religion, sort of like voodoo. The leader of this cult, Adolfo de Jesus Costanzo, located in the Matamoros, Mexico region, manipulated drug kingpins, promising them immunity and protection of law enforcement through their rituals. Unsuspecting victims were lured to Costanzo's ranch in Saint Helena to be used in grotesque human sacrifices. Ugh. Eventually, the bodies were found, and while Costanzo and his high priestess eluded capture, authorities burned down the cult's shack, forcing Costanzo out of hiding. And in a violent standoff, karma caught up to Costanzo. He ate it, and several cult members were arrested. Bummer. Why would you do something like that? Oh, I mean, criminals work with criminals all the time, so who knows? Our next contestant is Avril LeBaron, who was dubbed the Mormon Manson by the media. That's funny. LeBaron started the Church of the Lamb of God after he and his brother clashed, and Avril left the sect his brothers ran, convincing his followers that he received his orders directly from God. And with that, LeBaron used the abandoned Mormon doctrine of blood atonement. This abandoned doctrine allows for the killing of sinners to cleanse them of evil. Okay. With 51 children by 13 wives, Jesus, when did this dude sleep? And amassing hundreds of followers over 20 years. It was his followers that allegedly murdered over 20 people on LeBaron's orders. LeBaron was arrested in Mexico in 1979. Mexican authorities handed him over to the FBI. And LeBaron was charged with the murder of another polygamous sect leader. Avril LeBaron was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison in the state of Utah. Despite his death in 1981, LeBaron was still marking people for death from beyond the grave. His remaining followers was using a hit list that he believed were traitors. The Oxygen Channel actually featured this on their Deadly Cults program in one of their episodes, and there was a 3-part series on Hulu, Daughters of the Cult, which talked more about LeBaron and his family, with information coming from some of his own children that escaped the cult. I actually watched that one, and that one was pretty cool, in the way that was very informative and educational. So if you have Hulu, I strongly, shameless plug, strongly recommend checking out Daughters of the Cult if you want more information on Avril LeBaron and his murderous cult. Let's go ahead and stick with the theme of religion here. Next up, we have Warren Jeffs and the FLDS. Now, you may or may not have heard of this group and its self-proclaimed prophet. Jeffs was arrested, tried, and convicted on charges of sexual assault. The FLDS, known as the Fundamental Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. This group began shortly after the Mormon Church banned the practice of polygamy in the late 1800s. Now, for those of you playing the home game, polygamy is where you have more than one wife. For those of you who watch the docuseries Sister Wife, you got a good working knowledge of what polygamy actually is. The FLDS is a splinter group of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and Jeffs took over the role as prophet after his father Roland passed away. And Warren also took his father's wives, and his father had numerous wives, and some of these women were barely 18. Some of them were barely 15. Perverts. This group sees women as subservient to men. They're not allowed to cut their hair, wear pants, or work outside the home. The only work they're allowed to do is on their back and on their knees. Bastards. Most, if not all of them, have a high school education. Barely. Warren Jeffs is currently serving a life sentence in Texas for sexual assault of a minor, aggravated sexual assault, and both crimes were against girls under the age of 16. I hope they got him in solitary confinement, because if not, he ain't gonna make it much longer once them good old Texas boys find out, you know what I'm saying here. Jeffs also married young women of the sect, some not even 12 years old, off to men old enough to be their grandfather, in forced arranged marriages. Now, There's been a few documentaries about this group. According to sources, Jeffs is still running the sect from inside his prison cell. And sticking with the Mormon, and to be clear, I don't have an issue with them. I've met several people who practice the Mormon faith, and they are really decent people. They're great people. It's these extremists that will come along and fuck up a good thing, just because their way is better. And it just goes to show you there is one in every fucking crowd. And there is also another documentary on Hulu, Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, something like that. There's documentaries out there all over the place about the FLDS. In sticking with those crazy Mormon extremists, we have the School of Prophets, and Hulu has a movie based on this one, Under the Banner of Heaven, which is based on the book of the same title by John Krakauer. And this is Ron and Dan Lafferty. Both were sentenced to prison for the murder of their sister-in-law and their toddler niece in 1984 because of her opposition to plural marriage, better known as polygamy. They claimed they had received their orders from the Almighty himself and were using that blood atonement clause in the Mormon faith. Ron Lafferty was sent to Utah's death row and he died there. His brother Dan is serving out a life sentence for his role in the crimes. And this is why I do not adhere to any one particular religious doctrine. A lot of them are kind of boring too. I mean, just saying. Our next contestant is Love Has Won. This sounds like a particularly fun one. In April of 2021, the remains of a 45-year-old leader of the group were found mummified in a home in Moffett, California. Okie dokie. Amy Carlson was known as the Mother of God to her followers and claimed to be the reincarnation of Jesus Christ and Marilyn Monroe. I just want a minute to get a mental image of that. Okay. I'm sorry, but I can see Jesus standing over a vent holding his robe down and grinning. Yeah, I'm twisted, I know. Shut up because you're still listening. She also claimed she could cure cancer and talk to angels. Okay. The group was also brainwashing people and taking their money. Local law enforcement didn't believe that there was any foul play surrounding her death, but 7 members of the group were arrested for child abuse and abuse of a corpse. Sounds like a fantastically lovely group to invite to your next holiday barbecue. Not. Aren't these just the best groups full of fun-loving, good-time people? I'm telling you. Hold on to your coconuts, baby. We still got more insanity to go. Next up, we have NXIVM. Keith Rainier, a man so attractive that he had to start a sex slavery cult to score. Seriously, look this man up. He's not attractive. Mother had to tie a pork chop around his neck to get the dog to look at him. What started as a networking group ended up becoming a nightmare for some women. Some of these women were actually branded like livestock with the man's initials. These women were also punished and blackmailed by their so-called masters. Rainier was arrested in 2018 and held without bail. One of his cronies, Allison Mack of the TV show Smallville, was also arrested on charges of sex trafficking. She was tried and found guilty and will be doing community service until hell freezes over. She needs to be locked in jail. Rainier, on the other hand, is serving 120 years for kiddie porn and exploiting a child. I hope he rots in jail. But on the upside, his little group did empower women, empowered them to stand up for themselves and see that this group was shut down and shut down hard and bringing some media attention to it. Fucking awesome. That's what I call empowerment. In the 1970s, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, also known as Osho, not Ocho, Osho, and his followers built a utopia in Wasco County, Oregon, complete with a shopping mall, school, hospital, and grocery store. And the locals weren't too happy with the people dressed all in red and preaching free love, but they attempted to live in peace. However, that wasn't good enough for this group, and they tried to take over the entire damn county by launching a biological attack on the community using salmonella. 700 citizens suffered food poisoning, and the Rajneesh still lost the damn election. Go figure. Netflix has a documentary, Wild Wild Country, and the case was featured on Forensic Files. Bhagwan has since died, and his right hand, Ma'anan Sheila, or as we affectionately refer to her, Ramen Noodle Sheila, is now living quiet life in Europe after serving time for her crimes. The movement still has followers in India, the US, the UK, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands, but they didn't kill any followers. Nobody died, except for Bhagwan, or as we call him, the Mogwai. Oh my goodness gracious, where did all these fucking Mogwai come from? Get them out of the lane quickly. So that's a plus. So that's a slightly happy ending to this cult. Not a great big happy ending, but it was a slightly happy ending. Not such a happy ending for our next group. It was the early 1970s when Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles came to be known as Bo and Peep and began assembling their crew. Their reasoning that the Earth was going to be wiped clean and their only chance of survival was to leave Earth in a UFO. In 85, Nettles left early when she died of cancer, but Applewhite continued on. 5 years later, the group would isolate themselves from friends and family and the public, and they would use the internet as a recruiting tool. Sadly, in 1997, I believe, am I right? Probably. I don't know. We'll keep reading. 38 of the followers in Applewhite rented a mansion in Southern California, and with the help of vodka, phenobarbital, and applesauce in a plastic bag over their heads, died in a mass suicide. Each member were all dressed in identical black tracksuits, black and white Nikes with purple cloths over their heads, and each member had a shoulder patch reading Heaven's Gate Away Team. Their belief that there was a UFO hidden in the tail of the comet Hale-Bopp that was passing Earth, and this UFO would take them to heaven, away from the destruction that was about to befall the planet. Each member had adopted a asexual appearance. Both male and female members had closely cropped hair, and some of the men even underwent surgical castration, and the entire group lived a celibate life. According to documentaries, the group lived as if they were living on a starship, and every aspect of their life was controlled by Applewhite, all the way down to the exact amount and type of food consumed at each meal. Now, if you have the free streaming service Tubi, there is a series, Murder Made Me Famous, and this cult was featured there. It's really sad, actually. I love me some sci-fi movies, with Star Trek being one of my all-time favorites, but I don't know that I could go that far. I'm having too much fun in this life to skip out to have a chance to ride in a UFO. Besides, I got this thing about being probed, and you got to buy me dinner first, and we got to go out 2 or 3 times. We're gonna be really close before you probe me. And I'm not making jokes about this. I mean, these people were led to their deaths. Someone played on their beliefs, and that's what these cult leaders are. They're master manipulators. They will find your belief and they will play on it. Believe it or not, though, actually, the Heaven's Gate website is still up. It's not archived. It is actually there. Allegedly, hosting is paid for by the families of the survivors as a memorial to the lost loved ones. You can visit it at www.heavensgate.com. And as a side note, one member of this cult was the brother of Nichelle Nichols, who portrayed Lieutenant Uhura in the original Star Trek, and he actually asked her to endorse the group, and naturally she refused. And she didn't want to be associated, and I can't say that I blame her. But still a sad ending for this group, and I think it sucks. I really do. Sticking with UFO cults, we have Raelism, and this is a UFO religion founded in 1974. They believe that life was created specifically by aliens. They believe that the prophets, Jesus, Buddha, all of them are actually aliens. They strive for world peace, sharing, democracy, nonviolence, and have a very liberal attitude towards sex. According to the group, through things like human cloning and mind transfer, humans can achieve eternal life. And this is just about the nicest group on our list. They may be a little out there, but at least they're not killing members for money. And some of their doctrine actually sounds like Ancient Aliens episode. So Like I said, they're just about the nicest group we have on there. Talk about a fucked up trip so far. On to our next fun-filled doom and gloom group, and that is the Order of the Solar Temple. Founded in 1984 in Geneva, Switzerland by Joseph de Mombro and Luc Jouret. The group, as one of many, saw itself as a revival of the medieval Knights Templars. Jouret would make claims that he was not only Christ, but a reincarnation of one of the members of the medieval order. Okay. Both de Mombro and Jouret prophesied that Emmanuel, de Mombro's daughter, would take the members of the group to a planet that orbited Sirius after their earthly deaths. This doomsday cult also believed that the end of the world would take place in the 1990s. However, because this vision was exposed as a hoax, Emmanuel and several other members of the group left. The order now drew its inspiration from the ideas of the medieval Christian military order. De Mombro believed that Christ would come back as a solar god, but as is seen with many of these groups, the belief shifted from religion to paranoia and doomsday. Members began to believe that to survive the coming apocalypse, they would need to ascend to a higher plane. Sounds like, seems to be an eerily familiar trend among some of these cults. Once they ascended to that plane, they would be reborn on a planet that was orbiting near the star Sirius. The group killed one of its members who spoke out against them, and that member's wife and child in September of 1994. Weeks after, de Mombro would order the death of an infant he believed to be the Antichrist. Following that, it was believed that the end was near, and it was time for the move to the new planet. On October 4th and 5th of 1994, 53 members in Canada and Switzerland were murdered or committed suicide, and all the buildings were set on fire. The remains of de Mombro and Jouret were found among the bodies. Well, if you ask me on that one, it saves money. It means we don't have to do any type of court things. And even though they weren't in the U.S., still, it saves that government money on trials and housing of inmates. Let's take a little trip to South Korea where we find Paradise. No, seriously, that's the name of the group. Headed by the Benevolent Mother, aka Park Soon-ja, she operated out of a factory that she owned and told her followers that she spoke for God. Okay. In 1987, she was under investigation for stealing money from her followers. 31 people, including her 3 children, were discovered dead in her factory. Investigators believed that the followers had used drugs and choked each other to death. Short and sweet, I guess. I got nothing on that one. I had never heard of it until now. Next, we have Synanon, and this may be one of the dangerous cults in American history. It actually started out as a drug rehab program founded in 1958 by Charles Dietrich. This group transformed into an alternate community that centered on group truth-telling sessions called The Game. By the 1970s, it had evolved into the Church of Synanon. As time passed and Dietrich became more and more money and power hungry, he charged his members outlandish fees and forced them into taxing physical labor. Anyone who tried to shut the community down found themselves on Dietrich's hit list. This included a lawyer, Paul Morantz, who also almost died as a result of the attempted murder that Dietrich arranged. The group was shut down in 1991 for tax fraud, destruction of evidence, and terrorism. Dietrich died 6 years later, and this group was also featured on Deadly Cults on the Oxygen Channel. Huh. Well, okie dokie. Moving on to the Chicago Rippers, this group was led by former employee of serial killer John Wayne Gacy, Robin, and I'm going to butcher this name, Gleck. For 2 years, this satanic cult terrorized the Illinois area, and reports indicated that they were directly responsible for the disappearance of 18 women. For a 2-year period, this cult was known for its brutal mutilation of bodies and of its victims. 1981, a 28-year-old woman was walking home and was abducted off the streets into a van. She was found mutilated with the left breast missing 10 days later. Police would later reveal that the cult would often remove the breasts of their victims, and that is all the information I have on that. So I pray they are still not moving forward. And if they are, I hope somebody finds them soon. Like now. Next up, we have Jim Jones and the People's Temple. People's Temple was founded by Jim Jones. However, in its very early stages, it started in Indiana. So, sometimes I don't admit where I'm from. Mhm. It was first known as the Community Unity Church. This cult would eventually lead over 900 of its members committing suicide. Was first introduced simply as a religious movement linked to Christianity and not as a communistic society that Jones had in mind. Known also for killing Leo Ryan, the only United States congressman to die in the line of duty on a Guyana airstrip. People's Temple collapsed later that day with the mass suicide of the group. The entirety of this mass suicide represents how, in some cases, people can either be driven to do the bidding of whom they see to be as their leader, even if it would defy all that they have previously thought right or true. It also represents, even if the members of a cult are brainwashed, violent force may be necessary for your followers to follow you. They were one of the most notable cults of all time. This group helped pave the way for newer, more extremist religious movements of the future. And some of these cults, I'm going to go back to this shameless plug. Some of these cults are featured on Murder Made Me Famous. Jim Jones, I believe the Mansons. I think the Branch Davidians are in there as well. You'd have to check it out. It's pretty cool. Next up, we have the Manson family. And the Manson family was a commune and cult created by Charles Manson in California in the 60s. Most of his followers were young women, and they believed he was the reincarnation of Jesus, and he taught that a race war was coming. Manson instructed his followers to kill because he believed the murders would provoke the race war. And in all, 9 people were murdered in several separate attacks. Manson was convicted of 9 counts of first-degree murder, and he was imprisoned until his death in 2017. Other members of the cult are still in prison, and I believe there is only one left. I didn't look too far into that. And last but certainly never least, we have the Branch Davidians. The Branch Davidians originated in 1955 from a schism among Shepherd's Rod Davidians, which stemmed from the Seventh-day Adventist teachings. David Koresh began leading the group in 1987, abandoning many of the original teachings and adopting the belief that the end of the world was near. Koresh's followers took over the Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, also known as Mount Carmel. Koresh kept spiritual wives, some of whom was underage, and the government also had eyes on the group because they believed Koresh was stockpiling weapons. What is it with these guys and underage girls? Never understand it. In 1993, the AT&F and the Texas National Guard raided the Waco compound, and the raid led to a shootout that left 4 agents dead after a 51-day standoff with the FBI. On April 19th, federal agents launched tear gas to try and force people out. Soon after, the compound erupted in a massive blaze. 82 people, including Koresh, died. And to this day, I swear, I think Clinton and Reno gave the okay for the TAC team to light the match. That is my thought on it. Are all of these groups wrong? I don't know. Did they do things that were wrong? Yes. The underage girls, the killing, Davidians and the stockpiling weapons, that is their Second Amendment right. That shit needed to be let go of. The underage girls, okay, yeah, that's an issue. But still, it's a mixed bag of psychosis, and the sad part of it is a lot of these groups are still out there. Not these exact groups, but many like them. That's all I got for you today, my friends. And I apologize, it's been a while, but life gets in the way. But join us again next time for another thought provoking episode. And until we meet again, my friends, keep your eyes and your mind open. And as always, try to stay out of the darkness.